Okay. Hold down too. There we go. Got it? Got it. Okay. Well, I've got here a Warren 9.5 XP winch that my brother and I are going to do a little bit of a rebuilding on. There's nothing wrong with it. It still works fine. Free spool still works good. It's been on the truck for 9 years. Never had a problem with it, but we're going to go ahead and take it apart, check and make sure that there's no water in the housing anywhere, put some new grease in there, clean up the terminals, and just sort of freshen it up. So we'll get started on that, and I'll just keep filming as we get it apart and put it back together. We're going to start over here with the end housing. That's what Warren calls it. I generally call it the planetary housing, but we're going to start by pulling the engagement lever off, and it just has one little Allen head bolt in there, and then the lever just pops off just like that. Now that we have the lever off, we're actually going to remove the planetary housing itself. Now there's 10 Allen head bolts that secure the planetary housing to the drum support. Those are the 10 bolts right there. They're about 2.5 inches long. So we just thread these out, and then we'll be able to separate the planetary housing from the drum support bracket. Now we're going to move on to actually separating the two drum support housings. And I'll point these out in just a second. That's one of the drum support housings, and the other one is on the other side. Now the pieces in between are called the tie rods, so we're just unbolting them. It's another Allen head bolt, just like we just removed from the planetary housing. We've left the tie rods connected to one side of the drum support housing just to make things simple. So now we can separate that and look at the inside of our drum. Now everything looks okay. There looks to be a little bit of rust, but that's really contained within the grease, so it should come off easily. Inside the drum support housing, there is a plastic bushing that keys into a little notch on the inside there of the drum support housing. So now we can pull the drum off of there. Also, I'd like to point out there is a rubber gasket on the inside of the drum support housing and another plastic bushing that again is keyed off the drum support housing. This is the last step in disassembly. We need to remove the motor from the drum support housing. Now there's two long bolts in there, and they thread all the way through the motor into the drum support housing. Now we used a ratchet to break the bolts loose. We're just using a nut driver right now to pull them out. It's a 3/8 inch head on that bolt. So now we'll just get this drum support housing separated from the motor, and we'll be all ready. So now I'll take you inside the planetary housing and show you how that works. Okay, I'm going to show you real quick how to reassemble the whole planetary assembly on this Warren winch, and I'm going to do it just before we go in and put some new grease on these things. So what I've already done is I put this little slide collar inside the end housing, and I've put the lever back on with the bolt. Now right now it's in the engaged position, and you can see that this little collar engages with some teeth cast in there down at the end of the planetary housing. So I can't turn that. When I rotate it to the free spool position, now I can rotate this slide ring. But I'll put it back down into the engaged position. First thing I'm going to do is put the sun gear back in there like that. Then we go with the first stage planetary. We slide that in place. Kind of spin it just to make sure it's not binding on anything. Then we go with the second stage planetary. And again, drop that in place. Give it a spin. Everything's moving just fine. So then we have a new gasket on here. So we put the gasket in place, line it up with the holes. Then we put our ring gear back in place. Now this actually does spline onto this end housing right here. You can see the teeth here on the end, and it does spline in there. So you got to get the splines to line up and the bolt holes to line up. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we got that in place. Then we take our third stage planetary assembly, and this can be a little bit tricky. You do have to fiddle with the gear teeth a little bit to get them to line up. We're getting close. There we go. So that's in place. And then the last thing is this little bowl gear. This actually gets driven on these outer teeth here of the third stage planetary, and it matches up with another set of teeth on the drum itself. So what I've done here is I've just put the hexagonal little shaft, and I've just connected it to a drill motor here, and I'll show you how slowly this planetary gear set actually spins. This drill's not very fast. It's about 1200 RPM. But that's how much power you get in gear reduction from this planetary housing. And this, like I said, this little, about at most 3/8 inch shaft is all that drives this winch, which pulls 9,500 pounds. So that's how it goes back together. I'm going to take this apart and we're going to start greasing everything up, and then we'll finish reassembling the rest of the winch. And for grease, we weren't able to find exactly what Warren uses, so we just found this this marine grade grease at our local auto parts store. So that's what we're going to be using to reassemble this planetary housing. So the footage here has obviously been sped up, and that's simply because we're just putting new grease on everything and don't want to waste your time. So this is the slide gear, the slide ring, and we're just reinstalling that. And here in a second we will reinstall the lever. Now that actually has a little cam button on it that when you rotate the lever, it actually slides the ring up and down to engage and disengage the clutch, and you'll see that here in just a second. So here you can see that slide gear moving up and down as I move the lever from the engaged position to the free spool position. So again, just applying more grease to the parts. The part in my brother's hand right now is the first stage planetary. And that little groove right there needs to face up on that plastic bushing. And here we are, we're just putting in the third stage planetary assembly. We've edited out installing the second stage. It's just like putting in the first. And then here we are spinning up the planetary housing just to make sure that the grease is all spread around in there. So we're putting the gasket on the planetary housing, and we're fixing to bolt it back on into place. Now we do have to clock the planetary housing so that the lever is in the correct position for the opening that's on top of the bumper, so that you can reach in there and throw that lever to engage or to free spool the winch. So we've got the winch reinstalled into the truck, and as you can see here, we're just feeding the line back in. We did replace the braided steel winch cable with the new synthetic winch rope, and since our rollers on the fairlead were kind of marred up, we had to replace the rollers with the new Delrin plastic rollers for our new synthetic winch rope. So I appreciate y'all watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe.